Okay, riddle me this. What does a Genius Society member who cares about nothing but understanding the fundamentals of life have anything to do with an ambassador from the Shanzhou Luofu? Unless that ambassador serves a purpose to further the genius's study, it's next to nothing. So when Genius Society member 81 Ran Mei was mentioned in the same scenario with a missing and possibly dead Ting Yun, it was curious. Yep, I'm talking about the very same Ting Yun that we saw twisted her neck and revealed herself to be the vessel of Lord Ravager Phantylia in 1.2 Quest. The Ting Yun whose body then disappeared after Phantylia revealed her true identity, an ambassador from the Skyfaring Commission whom Yukong held a soul-soothing ceremony for. The very same one whose passing we were supposed to feel sad about, or so the plot commanded it. Before the soul-soothing ceremony, Yukong promised that she would do everything in her power to find out the truth about Ting Yun's whereabouts. One such effort was asking Fei Xiao to follow the trail of Ting Yun's last known ship route, and the Yaoqing general came back bearing the news that the ship was no more, and that the wreckage left no survivors. However, her fleet was not the first to arrive on the scene. Somebody else got there first, and it was none other than Ran Mei. A character who is presumed dead is likely to have been discovered by a scientist who has tried and succeeded at reviving the dead. You can understand why this piqued my interest, right? But before I put on my tinfoil hat, let's go through what we know of Ting Yun so far. Last year, I made a video criticizing the writing of Ting Yun, highlighting the lack of personal attachment to her as a character before her unexpected death. We barely knew her as a travel guide employed by Yukong and then by Jingyuan, knew next to nothing of her as a person, the event of her death shrouded in mystery. So when Yukong dragged us to join her in a Foxian-style funeral to honor Ting Yun's life, I personally felt detached from the entire ordeal. Save for my sadness for Yukong, of course, because once again, she lost someone close to her. Be it on the battlefield or the Skyfaring Commission, the Helmmaster couldn't seem to catch a break. Trailblazer was also brought on this journey to get to know Ting Yun from the people she had had connection with. They delivered gifts Ting Yun had prepared for them before her departure. For once, we get a glimpse of Ting Yun outside of her role as the Express Cruise tour guide, late as it was. So the forced sadness and grief aside, we learned that Ting Yun was a real person. She had friends in Luofu, from the owner of a tea house to the owner of a restaurant in Arum Alley. She had known Yukong for decades, even before she joined the Skyfaring Commission. However, after Phantylia revealed her true form, Ting Yun's body disappeared from the scene. Welt noted this to be something unusual for a Lord Ravager to do. Usually they would leave behind the body of a person they had possessed or used as a show of power. Phantylia might have done this on purpose to plant seed of doubts among the people, all part of her plan to bring about Luofu's self-destruction. Meaning, it was never the real Ting Yun whose neck got snapped that day, but merely an image Phantylia devised to serve her own purposes. This can be further proven by Ting Yun's presence while the Express crew were shutting down the devices that emit Mara eliciting smoke. Fusion said that the smoke emitted from the devices was infused with some sort of medicine that could affect long-life species, triggering their Mara. Thus, it was crucial that the crew helped to shut it down before the Cloud Knight could move forward and confront the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. Despite living a much shorter life, Foxians are still considered long-life species. Mara won't treat them any differently than other long-life species. And as we've learned in the recent Memoria event in 2.4, it is further emphasized that Mara is a sickness that messes with the memory. The doctor/researcher who commissioned Trailblazer mentioned that by collecting Luofu people's scattered memoria, he was hoping to have a better understanding about Mara's struck and perhaps also finding a cure. So, if Phantylia was possessing the real Ting Yun's body with all of her memories retained in her mind, she would have been stricken with Mara if she inhaled the smoke. The fact that Ting Yun decided to join the crew while they were shutting down the devices without a single care in the world and got out of it not Mara-stricken was proof that it was not the real Ting Yun after all. Phantylia must have expected it. Perhaps Danshu told her they were working together after all, and that was why she didn't use Ting Yun's real body to infiltrate Luofu, but instead fashioned a body in the image of the ambassador. I suppose it was the soul-soothing ceremony that was the root of all the confusion. One second, I believed the real Ting Yun was still out there. The next, I was dictated to be sad and to grieve her passing by the narrative. Anyhow, we got the first part covered. Phantylia infiltrated the Luofu using a fake body in the image of Ting Yun. The Express crew had never met the real Ting Yun. From the moment they arrived on the Luofu, it had always been Phantylia. When the crew first met Ting Yun upon arrival on the Luofu, she got immediately suspicious of the crew because they somehow managed to get past the Jade Gate. She said that was impossible because her ship was the last one allowed to pass before the Luofu shut the Jade Gate. Now, while we know it was Silver Wolf's doing, hacking into the Luofu system to open the Jade Gate for the Astral Express, what's important to note here is the fact that Ting Yun's ship was the last to arrive before the Luofu's lockdown. Ting Yun had been traveling before the Stellaron disaster occurred, but the one who returned to the Luofu was a Ting Yun disguised Phantilia. Ting Yun was replaced sometime during her travels. I think this is what Yukong suspected to be the case, and that was why she contacted Fei Xiao to investigate it. Remember how Yukong promised Ting Yun that she would do everything in her power to find out the truth behind Ting Yun's disappearance? Asking Fei Xiao to follow the trail of Ting Yun's ship was one such effort. When Fei Xiao arrived on the Luofu, other than for Jing Yuan's questioning and a visit to see Hu Lei, she came with the result of her investigation for Yukong. She and her army had followed the route Yukong had told her about and had found the wreckage of the Whistling Flame ship. But the wreckage was all that she found. There were no survivors and no cargo. This, of course, could easily be missed because neither Fei Xiao nor Yukong mentioned Ting Yun by name, but a quick search would tell us that the Whistling Flames is one of the guilds under the Skyfaring Commission, a guild led by Ting Yun. The Whistling Flames ship would be the ship that Ting Yun took on her business travels outside of the Luofu, the same ship that she took before her disappearance and replacement by Phantilia. Fei Xiao had not disclosed the nature of the wreckage, but it is safe to assume that it was Phantilia's doing. She intercepted Ting Yun's ship en route so that she could get into the Luofu disguised as Ting Yun, which explains why, if the Ting Yun we met on the Luofu was indeed a fake body and the real Ting Yun was still out there somewhere, why Ting Yun had never made contact with the Luofu? She is probably dead already. Phantilia saw no use of the real Ting Yun, she was gonna conjure a fake one anyway, so why bother keeping her alive? Which makes the mention of Ruan Mei being the first one to arrive on the scene all the more interesting. As an expert in the field of life sciences, the mention of Ruan Mei within the same scenario of a possibly dead Ting Yun is suspicious and interesting. Being part of the Genius Society means that Ruan Mei has received the gaze of news. It is said that the gaze of erudition descended upon her as she was reaching a breakthrough during her experiment of attempting to bring her parents back to life. Yep, you heard that right. Ruan Mei's parents have passed away, and at one point in time, she attempted to bring them back to life. Judging from the timeline, this was one of her earliest solo experiments in the field of life sciences after her parents' passing. Upon receiving Nusu's gaze, Ruan Mei asked them a question, which we're not privy to, but after that, Ruan Mei started to focus and study only the fundamental nature of life. Various life forms were created out of her research and experiments, among which are the Emanator of Propagation clone that stayed alive less than a minute just as she had predicted, the cat-like creatures living in their cake or tart-shaped like shells, and Genius Society member 8, Lambda. Yep, she attempted to bring yet another person back to life. She succeeded, but Ruan Mei noted that Lambda seemed unwilling to come back and proceeded to unalive himself. So basically, Ruan Mei is no stranger to the whole bringing people back to life business. If she did retrieve Ting Yun's body from the scene then attempted to bring her back to life, that wouldn't be her first rodeo. But I don't think it's that simple. Think about it. Ruan Mei's sole focus is to study the fundamentals of life, and by extension, the eons, the one kind of beings that could tickle her fancy because of the mystery surrounding their existence. Why would she care about a dead Amicassador from the Shanzhou Alliance to the point that she would go out of her way to retrieve the Amicassador's dead body? Or whatever was left of her body for that matter? Unless Ting Yun's body does have a purpose, considering that she is a Foxian, a long-life species that is genetically related to Borisins. See, Borisins are long-life species who are the most dominant race among the abominations of abundance. That is to say that they have also been blessed by Yaoshe the Abundance, but unlike the Shanzhou people who gradually see it as a curse, the Borisins embrace the blessing, believing that Yaoshe only blesses the strong. Among the long-life species, Borisins are known to have the greatest healing ability. On top of that, they are also able to shape-shift, an ability known as Moonrage. This ability, according to the records found at the Seat of Divine Foresight, has also been observed in some Foxians. You probably have heard of this term too from Fei Xiao's character introduction. While Moonrage sounds like an impressive ability to have, an in-game tutorial suggests that this ability makes the Borisins move faster, it comes with a drawback that causes deformation. For the Borisins, it is not much of a problem thanks to their rapid healing ability. However, from Fei Xiao's character introduction, that doesn't seem to be the case for her. It is said that if she were to hunt down all the abominations in her limited lifetime, then the only enemy she has would be herself. The way I interpret this is that if Fei Xiao exerts herself, going even more aggressive in her pursuit of the abominations of abundance than she already has, it would trigger the moon rage within her, causing the deformation that would eventually turn her into an abomination herself, becoming the one thing that she has been hunting down all her life. This is also what was implied to be the illness that Fei Xiao came to Bailu to heal. Bailu couldn't do anything about it, but Zhao Zhao said he had some leads. That was why he was trying to get close to Hulei as they were moving him out of Luofu's shackling prison. He wanted to get a sample of his toxin to hopefully make a cure for Fei Xiao. Now, if we bring this back to Tingyun's case, what if Tingyun also has this ability, this DNA within her? What if, in her endless pursuit of understanding life, Runmei also wants to get her hands on some moon rage experiment? Why do all Borisins have this ability but not all Foxians? What can trigger the moon rage in Foxians? What can keep it at bay? Is there any way to revert the process once it is triggered? Can this ability bring back a dead Foxian back to life? I'm sure there are a lot of questions that she could be asking and start experimenting on. And I don't know about you, but this sounds more plausible than Runmei just randomly dropping by the wreckage of a ship and deciding that she would save the passengers. And before I end this video, let's talk about the Leviathan fossils real quick. While I couldn't find any possible connection between that and Tingyun, I found it weird that Himeko could just tell us that. Remember what happened when we met Runmei last time? She made sure to quote-unquote poison us so that we couldn't talk about her or her experiments to anyone. But there was Himeko freely talking about her getting commissioned by Runmei to retrieve some Leviathan fossils for her. And it didn't seem like Himeko was under the influence of Runmei's serum because she was talking clearly about what she was delivering to whom. Unlike Trailblazer, who talk nonsense every time they tried to mention Runmei in a conversation, seems like Runmei trusts Himeko enough that she didn't see it necessary to drug her. Food for thought. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.